welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Christy. I'm a homeschool mom to 3, and today's video is going to be a collective video about reading. So what I mean by that is that we have used a lot of different reading curriculums over the years to teach my middle child, which is the first child I've ever taught to read. And I actually get quite a few questions on older videos about specific resources, if we're still using it, how is it going, if they've noticed an absence of it, why did we stop? People who stumble across that may not have seen all of my videos over the years, my homeschool update videos where I talk a lot about those kinds of switches. And so I thought it would be helpful to put like a collection of thoughts about all of the reading resources we've used up until now in one video. So it's in one place for everyone. So I do want to mention that just because I am not using a resource any longer does not make it a bad curriculum. I don't think any of these curriculums are bad. I, will use a resource until it's no longer serving us in the way that I would like, and then we move on. We also switch around things for pure engagement reasons. My son is he gets bored with the same thing all the time. And so sometimes I have to switch things up for that reason as well. Reading has been definitely like a mountain climbing journey. So we're climbing and making a lot of progress, and then we kind of plateau for a while and we kind of stay in the same thing, and then he makes more progress again and has another leap. And that has just been my experience so far. I think that that's pretty common for a lot of kids. Just because we are no longer using one of these things does not mean that it won't work for you more long term. You're just gonna have to try it out. So these are just kind of my overall thoughts and kind of where my mind went when we changed things or we tried things. Going back to the very beginning when we were teaching kind of those foundations of letters and sounds, we did preschool with Playing Preschool by the Busy Toddler. And if you've been with me since those days, you know how much I love that curriculum. For this child in particular, this was the best fit preschool curriculum I think we could have used. We really loved it. We learned a ton from that curriculum, and not just letters and sounds, but math and a lot of other skills too. So I can't recommend that enough. That is a great preschool curriculum when you're just starting out. Going into the following year, we did another year of preschool. We called it pre-K because he just I wasn't ready to put him in kindergarten per se, and he wasn't quite there. He knew a lot of his letters and sounds, but there were still some that he struggled with. So we brought in two things. And for that year, we started letters and numbers from Gather Round. And we actually began that curriculum in book 3. And so we only used book 3 and 4 for him for that year. The reason that I did is because if you're not familiar with that curriculum, it is a 4-book kind of unit study-ish approach, and book 1 and 2 go through the alphabet from A to Z. Book 3 and 4 go back through the alphabet a second time, but they definitely build upon those letters and focus more on sounds. And then even in book 4, the last book, you're starting a little bit of blending, not a lot, but a little bit starting of the blending process. So developmentally, that's kind of where he fit. That curriculum was great for him. He really, really enjoyed all the cut and paste aspects of that, and the learning about different animals and different things along the way was super fun. We thoroughly enjoyed that. I said we used 2 things. So at this point is when I brought in Explode the Code. And I really like Explode the Code. I like the concept of it. I love that it's just it's worksheets to practice sounds and phonemic awareness and isolating sounds and different things. And I feel like that really helped him nail down those last few letter sounds he was struggling with. And we still use Explode the Code today. I know a lot of people actually use this for their sole phonics curriculum. I know there are teachers' guides that you can get separately with them and use it as a curriculum, I guess. I've never used it that way. I have just used it as kind of a supplement, but we really love that. Around this time, we were starting the blending process, and that was a little bit tricky and challenging for him to pick up. I actually started using an app, an app contacted me to try an app out, and we actually really enjoyed it. It's reading.com, and the app is actually called Raising Readers. It is different than most reading apps for kids because it's not just games and stuff to practice your skills. This app actually has lessons that you sit down with your child during and like go through, and they're very repetitive. They all flow the same way. There's like fun songs and videos and little stories and stuff. I credit a lot of the blending process clicking for him because of this app. So what's cool about the app is they have sliders. They are underneath words that they're reading. They're underneath sounds that they're trying to say. There's short sliders and there's long sliders. And so the child actually uses their finger and slides like short and long where they draw out the sound. And that really helped make blending click for him for sure. We still use this app today. Like every once in a while, we'll pull it out and just like have some fun with it. Even my littlest one has started kind of using the app a little bit. And yeah, so it's a great app if you want something that's more than just games and it's actually like has some instruction and like skill building in it. It's a really, really great one. Okay, so moving into kindergarten. So we were moving into kind of that reading CBC word flow, and we used a few resources from The Good and the Beautiful first. So we did the kindergarten prep. We did a bit of that, and then we moved into kindergarten. I will say that the kindergarten curriculum with The Good and the Beautiful worked fairly well for him in the beginning. So we did a decent chunk of it. The only thing I will say is I felt like the pace was pretty quick. So for those kids that maybe don't, pick up the reading concepts like naturally or like quickly, this might be a struggle for them. And that's what I kind of noticed with my son. It was just moving too fast. Another thing, for some reason, those booster cards they have with the curriculum where they practice every day was like a big stress point for him. And I still don't know why, because they're like basically pyramids where they're reading words and they like repeat. So it's actually supposed to help a lot with fluency. And for some reason, when I would pull this out, it was a tear trigger. He hated that so much. Obviously, the program wasn't working for him and it wasn't the right pace for him. So we moved into Abeka. And with Abeka, we actually didn't use the program in its entirety. It's pricey for one, and there's a lot of different parts to it. And so what I actually ended up doing was just using a couple pieces. So we used the handbook for reading, which I actually really like. And I think that it's a really good resource for some practice in a lot of different like blends and blending and that kind of thing. Like that worked really well. And that would be like our lesson. And then I got the K5 workbook, the letters and sounds book. And so he did the reading lesson in the handbook. And then he did like 1 to 2 pages of the worksheets just to kind of hammer those home. That actually worked well for a long time. And one thing that I think that this curriculum added to his skill base was grouping sounds into twos. Instead of individually reading each sound in a word, like the word cat, instead of saying k, a, t, cat, he was starting to group the sounds. Abeka's very focused on grouping those beginning sounds as chunks. He started saying cat. So he would go cat and he would blend that as one sound and then add the T on it at the end. That was a big practice for him during our time with Abeka. They were really reinforcing that. And I feel like that really helped with his fluency. He started reading words more quickly because he was starting to naturally just chunk that out rather than individualizing and isolating those sounds individually anymore. And so I do really appreciate Abeka for that. And I think honestly, that concept is like a really good way to start that process. And I do really like the way that Abeka goes with that. Also hit a wall with Abeka at one point, and that was kind of when we got into the second section of the handbook for reading. When we got into that second section, they went into silent E and long vowel sounds. Rather than doing any blends with short vowel sounds, they went right into like those kinds of more tricky concepts I feel like are more tricky. He just hit a wall. He was not progressing. We stayed on the same lesson for a few weeks, even the same one every day. And we just could not move past it. He could not grasp the concept of silent E at that point. And it was just really, really tough. And he came to me saying he hated reading. And that alarmed me because I never want to hear that come out of my kids' mouths. Like, I want them, like, I always wanted them to enjoy reading. I've always wanted them to find the enjoyment in reading. And I never want it to be a stressful time to where they just have like this aversion to it. So yes, I was honestly a little bit alarmed with that. And so I decided to move into something else, and I stumbled upon the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Teaching Reading. This curriculum was kind of an aha moment for me. The Ordinary Parent's Guide, which is a very simple, open and go, very scripted, very black and white curriculum that spans years of reading instruction. It goes from letter sounds to like what I would consider maybe like 3rd to 4th grade typical level. Debatable. And what it did was, after CVC, it went into blends with short vowel sounds. And that makes way more sense to me in my brain to go that direction rather than try to go into like long vowels and silent E and stuff. Like, blends with short sounds, I feel like is just a more natural progression in my brain. Obviously wasn't his, because it was working really well. So he started reading words like blank and glad and drink and bring and like different words like that. It worked really, really well for a really long time. We started, I don't know where in the book we started, but it was definitely when those blends started. It was past CVC, it was past the letter sounds. We didn't do it from the beginning, but we were very consistent with it, and we used it a long time, and it worked really well. It has a lot of repetition. We made progression, and I was seeing that progression, and it made me happy. So that worked really well for him for a long time. I do have a flip through of that curriculum. I will try to remember to link that down below, as well as any like videos on these specific resources I'm talking about. So if you're interested in seeing more in depth on something that I've mentioned, I will try to put some of those down below for you too. So we used that for a long time. It started to get boring, as a lot of things do for him with reading, especially because that's such a like focus. Like, for him, it takes a lot out of him. So his engagement went down. All About Reading is something that I see a lot of on YouTube. So many people use All About Reading, and it's always been kind of on my radar. I've always known about it, but a couple things kind of made me hesitant about getting it. One was the cost. I feel like it's very expensive for a reading curriculum that may not actually even last you 1 year. Like, you might have to use 2 levels in 1 year, depending on how quickly your child moves through it, of course. I'm always trying to like work on a budget, you know, and that's just like my mentality. The other thing that kept me from trying it, made me more resistant, is because everybody was using it. And I'm not always somebody that loves to just use something because everybody's using it. So that was another thing. I always did think that the way that went, because my son's very hands-on, I felt like it would probably work really well for him. And so I started kind of keeping an eye out on eBay for some used All About Reading things. And I ended up coming to a lot of really great deals on eBay. That is like one of my number one things. Like, look for your curriculum on eBay, because you might be able to save like a lot of money doing that and get almost brand new or lightly used things there. I actually didn't buy it as a whole set. I actually ended up getting individual pieces from different sellers and piecing it together for cheaper than a used set on eBay, and for very affordably. I bought the teacher's guide from one seller. I bought the student book from another seller that was selling it very affordably. I bought the readers from another one, and then I made the flashcards just to save a little bit of extra money. And because I was able to get it so affordably, I felt like there was no point in not trying it. Like, I needed to try it. And so we started that a couple months ago, and it has gone so well. We are loving it. He loves the hands-on aspects of it, the activities that he gets to cut out and do, he loves. The stories are really good. They're engaging, they're interesting, there's pictures, they're funny, they're great. And the fluency sheets, which are not his favorites, they are, I'm going to be honest, they're hard for him. The fluency sheets, though, I have seen such a benefit in his fluency from him doing them. So sometimes I just chunk out the fluency sheets, break them down smaller so he's not overwhelmed, and that's been better for him, and he's just improving with those as he goes along the curriculum, and I see a real benefit to those. So if your kid is struggling with the fluency sheets, push through because they are beneficial. The biggest benefit that I see and the biggest difference with All About Reading that I've noticed between all of the resources that we've used is the fact that they are really good at explaining why words are the way that they are, why they say the long vowel here and they may not here, and the different reasons behind it. And for my very logical thinking kid, it's really helped him because it helps him to know the reason why, and then it makes more sense to him and he remembers that when he's reading. And I think that that is the biggest thing and benefit that I've seen from All About Reading specifically for him. It's something that I didn't really notice as much in the other resources that we've used. I'm planning on sticking with that for the foreseeable future, and hopefully that works out because I really, really believe in the process of that curriculum. Honestly, I feel like all of these resources have cumulatively added something to his reading skill and ability. Obviously, he's made progress with each one, so none of them are bad. They're just what he needed at a certain time. That's all you can do. Like, you can only find the best fit for your kid as far as reading curriculum, but it's honestly more about them than it is about any curriculum. It's about their work that they put in. It's about their development, and when they make those developmental leaps to where things can make sense to them, it's about them. You know, it's more so than it is about anything, any resource that you could use. Don't put so much value on what you're using per se to teach reading. Obviously, you know, a different style may fit better for each kid, but it's really about them. And I personally am so proud of all of the work and effort that he's put into learning to read and where he is now. It's hard for him. It's like a lot of work, and he's just doing so well, and I'm so proud of him. Kids are going to read and, you know, master concepts when on their own time frame. Some kids will be slower at it, some kids will be quicker at it. It's just how it goes, and it's okay wherever they are. Like, they're progressing, and that's what matters. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful for some of you that might be curious about, you know, our journey so far with reading and different resources we've used and changed up and everything like that. So I hope that it was helpful. I also hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in another video very soon. Bye.